Colonel Tulsi Gabbard will be Donald Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence. Now, the DNI is among the most important appointments in the US intelligence community. The DNI is the executive head, in fact, of the entire US intelligence community of 18 intelligence agencies. The DNI's office also prepares the president's daily brief. And it goes without saying that this is yet another Trump appointment that should be received positively in New Delhi. Now, not only is Gabbard very pro-India, but she's also a known anti-war crusader. But she doesn't have the required intelligence experience of past office holders. She served for 2 years on the House Homeland Security Committee, and she's been accused in the past of appearing to work on behalf of Russia, allegations that were never proven. So it's no wonder then that her appointment for this powerful position that literally sits atop the nation's spy agencies and acts as the president's top intelligence advisor is raising eyebrows in the United States. But what's the significance of her appointment? Indeed, of all the recent Trump cabinet appointments like Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, John Ratcliffe and Mike Waltz. Joining me to discuss this are Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, and in the studio I have with me my colleague Deepak Bhadana. Gentlemen, welcome to the News9 Plus Show. Abhijit, I want to start by asking you this. You're on a tour of North America, I believe, to track the liberal meltdown in the face of Donald Trump's re-election and all his very, very interesting cabinet nominees. You know, make sense for us, Abhijit, these new names that we're hearing, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, and of course, Tulsi Gabbard, like we were saying that the first Trump cabinet was all about generals and admirals and all that. This Trump cabinet seems to be young, Gen Y colonels and lieutenant colonels. Abhijit.
Thanks, Sandeep. I was interviewing, my brief was entirely limited to interviewing Hindus and political leaders on the issue Hindu community faces out there. As for Trump, what he's doing is very interesting. There is this belief somehow that unless you are validated by a bunch of self-validating old people sitting in think tanks or, the Jobs for Boys circuit in DC.
Right.
And many Indians will be aware of this, right?
Yes.
You say anything on the military, they're like, have you taken 30 kilos and run 30 kilometers? Else you're not qualified to talk in the military.
Right.
So, it's that kind of an attitude where you have to gain the approval of policy lines that they take, and you have to pretend profound and this is the correct policy, and then they will praise you to the high heavens. What Trump is doing is he's bringing in all the people who have actually seen war, who have suffered war, but take a very contrarian approach to things because they believe that the policy has been, in India, I think the issue always been it's retirees who hijack military policy.
Right.
In America, the problem is it is this non-military cabal of self-validating thinkers that have completely hijacked all policy, not just military policy.
Right.
Which is why, if you remember, they were so opposed to Trump's Middle East forays when he had sorted out more problems than the previous 15 presidents had collectively.
Absolutely. The Abraham Accords.
So, you need that kind of new disruptive thinking. You can't keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again and expect different results. So everything you see, Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, Human for the immigration as the borders are and things like that.
Right.
All of them are people who have, created enemies in the system for basically being the boy who called out the emperor's new clothes.
Right, absolutely. And Abhijit, I'm going to come back to you on what you mentioned about the new disruptive thinking in the cabinet, and of course the fact that you are in Canada, Canada's Khalistan. Lots of questions there for you, but I want to bring in Ambassador Yogesh Gupta on this. Ambassador Gupta, we're used to a certain, profile for all cabinet appointees in the United States, and given the fact we are talking about them because they have enormous impact on India-US relations. What do you make of this new cabinet that Trump has put together, particularly in the intelligence community, when you have Tulsi Gabbard being appointed DNI, and I'm fully aware of the fact that the DNI is actually the agency that is in contact with our NSCS In fact, they are the ones who do the intelligence sharing, the DNI and Mr. Doval's office, the NSCS. Break down for us the importance of these appointments that we are seeing. Very, very new faces, radically, fresh appointees like Tulsi Gabbard. Ambassador Gupta.
I will like to make 2-3 comments. First is that, as the previous speaker just said, see, a whole lot of activities of the Biden government was controlled by the deep state.
Yes.
And this deep state was run by a Democrat who was chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
Right.
And it included people not only from the Congress and the Senate, as well as the administration, but also people who were economists, people who were from the think tanks,
yes.
people outside the government, from the business and so on. And these people were so powerful that they
yes.
could direct the president that you have to take a certain action.
Right.
Or you have to get rid of such and such person in such and such country. For instance, they ordered this regime change in Bangladesh.
Yes.
They ordered this regime change in India. It's
right.
another matter that they were not successful. But they made plenty of efforts.
Yes.
So, Trump has to get rid of these people. He has said that he's going to get rid of the people belonging to the deep state,
right.
as well as a large number of people in the US government who
right.
are aligned to the deep state or who are aligned to this woke ideology of the Democrats.
Right.
And for that, you need to have someone who firmly believes in your thinking, in your ideology, in your, thought process. And there comes the importance of Tulsi Gabbard or John Ratcliffe,
yes.
who would be named to the CIA.
Right.
Similarly, other appointments, there are 2-3 factors that are common. One is that all these people are very loyal to President Trump.
Yes.
Obviously, anyone who criticized Trump is out.
Right.
So you see the Pompeos are out. You see the former UN ambassador, that lady, she is out. And,
Nikki Haley, yes.
Yeah, Haley, she is out, and so many others. The other thing is that Trump has gone in for people who are young, people who are professionals, people
yes.
who are good in technology, knowledge of technology, people who firmly belong to his way of thinking, to the
right.
Republican Party's way of thinking. He wants to bring a change. He wants to bring a huge change.
Right.
As they say, MAGA, make America great again.
Right.
He wants to bring a huge change in the government, and that's why you have this, fellow Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk, chairing this Department of Government Efficiency. They want to study all these government regulations and, remove
absolutely.
all those
it's all about change, I think. It's MAGA and,
shorten the size of
yes.
the government, remove regulations, make the government more smarter, make
right.
the government more approachable, and so on.
Yes.
So all that is very good. All that is very good. And the good thing is, also another important point is that Trump is very clear. Biden was trying to coexist with China. Biden
right.
was trying to compete with China.
Yes.
But the Republicans, they want to beat China. They
right.
want to defeat China.
Right, absolutely. They're very clear on who the enemy is. I think there's no ambiguity on that. Yes.
They think that they have to win this rivalry against China.
Absolutely. But Ambassador Gupta, that point that you made about a very young cabinet and the fact that he's going in for a lot of millennials, Donald Trump. I'm going to ask Deepak Bhadana this, who's a millennial himself. Deepak, you've just been tracking the age profile of all of these cabinet appointees. Vivek Ramaswamy, 39. Elise Stefanik is 40. J.D. Vance, of course, is 40 as well. Matt Gaetz is 42. Tulsi Gabbard is 43. What's the larger message that Donald Trump is actually giving the Republican Party with these very young candidates? Is it like setting building up the Republican leadership of the future?
Certainly, and it's also a break from the past. See, if you look at like the traditional US policies, the administrations, the deep state or the establishment as it were,
right.
It's all, in the grasp of people who come from a very select few Ivy League colleges.
Right.
It's the same families, the same people who've carried on an agenda for decades.
Yes.
Trump is breaking away from it, which is kind of not surprising, really.
Right. So, gust of fresh air, the kind of appointees that he's brought in. The average age, as we were discussing, Deepak, yesterday, of the SecDef, Secretary of State and the NSA is 49. And, on our side, it would be in the 70s, early 70s. So, I mean, you're going to be looking at a generational shift when our ministers meet Trump's new cabinet. But Abhijit was talking about the new disruptive thinking that Donald Trump is bringing in. And Abhijit, since you're in Canada right now, what does Trump and his cabinet mean for the Canadian Khalistan movement? Do you think it will accelerate calls for a Khalistan in British Columbia? They probably give up the fact that there's not going to be a Khalistan in India, Khalistan of their dreams, certainly.
So I actually returned back from the Republic of Khalistan to the Republic of India yesterday.
Right.
But, the thing is, we need to understand, Khalistanis are not a separatist movement.
Right.
What they are a drug cartel, a drug organized crime and gun running cartel.
Yes.
That use secessionist rhetoric
Right.
to mask their criminal activities.
Yes.
And it's very successful, you see, because we keep falling into the trap because, the way the Indian government works
Right.
is that, unlike foreign governments where you put security on anything, water security,
Right,
energy
right.
security, it becomes high priority.
Yes.
Because security is sexy. In India, security doesn't get you any votes. So the moment you
Right.
put security on anything, a minister has no interest in it.
Yes.
It's exactly like that. The moment you say secessionist terrorists,
Yes.
ministers start taking notice. The officer who flags secessionism or terrorism gets promotions,
Yes.
is deemed very competent and things. And that is used. It's literally a bureaucratic and ministerial mindset
Right.
of prioritizing secessionism and terrorism
Right.
that is used against us in Canada. Now, what ends up happening is, first, there are two things. We need to know that Trudeau's Liberal Party actively campaigned against Trump. So
Right.
Trump is going to have absolutely no love lost for Trudeau. Not that he had a very high opinion of Trudeau to begin
Yes.
with. Number one. Number two, the problem is Pierre Poilievre is possibly even more Khalistani than Justin Trudeau. You
Right.
look at the four people surrounding him. Jasraj is one. Parm Gill is the other.
Right.
Tim Uppal is the other. They and Arpan Khanna, who is a Hindu, but his wife is in the World Sikh Organization.
Right.
These people literally control access to him. They are complete Khalistanis.
Right.
They have all been seen around photos of Bhindranwale or Talvinder Singh Parmar.
Right.
And these are people who, will use this sort of Pierre Poilievre's fiscal conservatism affection that Trump has to get close to Trump.
Right.
And completely sort of insulate the organized crime problem that is Khalistan, which is why, we need serious recalibration of our foreign and domestic policy
Yes.
narratives now. If we need Trump to take action, and he will, we need to link this to his pet subjects:
Right.
illegal immigration,
Yes.
organized crime, bad policing, infiltrated police. I mean, he of all people will know police are infiltrated because of all the lawfare cases run against him.
Yes.
How the intelligence community literally fabricated evidence against him. He'll understand all of that. We need to understand our talking points. My problem is Babu sitting in Delhi with their promotions and the ministers who give promotions based on secessionism, terrorism, alarmism will not do that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very important point there, Abhijit. The fact that this has actually been completely infiltrated. The Khalistan movement has been completely infiltrated, if you can call it a movement, by drug cartels. It's literally been run by drug cartels. Deepak, you remember the drug super lab that they bust in
It was
Canada about
incredible.
$500 million worth of meth?
Enough to kill apparently several 100,000 people. It was like in tons. There was
Yes.
fentanyl, anything you can name of, and added to that are weapons.
Weapons and
Assault weapons.
enough to equip an infantry battalion of the numbers that we haven't seen
So
before.
the question
This is-
certainly is, what are they intending to do?
Right.
Where are these weapons going to be used? Where is all that money, the proceeds going to?
Yes.
And this is something that indeed, people need to look into.
Ambassador Gupta, this point that Abhijit made about the fact that this is actually a a drug racket, an illegal immigration racket, a gang lord's enterprise that's masking itself as the separatist movement. We've discussed that in the past as well. Do you think this new Trump administration and all of these new faces who are actually got zero tolerance on terrorism, they know who the enemy is, how does this make the grounds for a new India external affairs policy with regards to such bad characters that are freely operating in Canada? Ambassador Gupta.
Sandeep, I sincerely hope that the Republicans, including President Trump and his cabinet colleagues, will have a very different attitude towards these issues, because, the Democrats had started thinking that, look, we promoted China and then China is giving us so much trouble,
yes,
and now India's economy is growing big, and therefore if India grows, India will also give us trouble. So it's better that you try to stymie India's development as much as possible. So you support Pakistan here, you support Bangladesh here, you
yes,
support Khalistan here, you support terrorist insurgents in the northeast and so on. So, basically that was their thinking. But I think this kind of insecurity, President Trump, who is not a typical politician,
right,
he's a businessman, and his thinking is very different. India doesn't harbor any ill will towards the US. India
right,
doesn't. India is very far below the US in most parameters.
yes,
We are not a competitor anywhere.
right.
So I think for anyone in the US to be insecure about India's development is, I think, very, very childish, very, very premature, very, very, absolutely, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So we hope that the Republicans will have a different sort of attitude, because India is going to be the big economy, big market, contribute to the global economic growth, contribute. Yes. Our thinking on many issues is similar to that of President Trump, particularly when it comes to Indo-Pacific, the rising threats in the Indo-Pacific.
Right, particularly the rise of China. Yes, yes.
So I think my own feeling or my own view is that President Trump and his colleagues and his government will view this Khalistani thing very different from the Democrats. And I hope that our people are able to make a good case. And as the previous speaker said, I think
yes,
we have to really change the narrative.
We have to change the narrative indeed.
Really
and Ambassador Gupta, I'm going to go back to
Abhijit
on changing the narrative. Abhijit, the fact that of course Khalistan, the so-called Canadian Khalistan movement, is one. The other is the kind of pressure that we've been seeing, this combined Five Eyes pressure that we saw in a couple of other cases where this alleged plot to assassinate Gurpatwan Singh Pannu and many other subtle cases about alleged interference in India's northeast and all that. You think there's going to be a radical shift in the Trump administration when it comes to these kind of cases where India is extremely sensitive about? Abhijit?
I think there will be a significant shift in most cases, but not the northeast, because that is Methodists and Presbyterians hold quite a bit of sway in this government, right, and they'll at least want talking points, which I think Trump will do. He'll probably raise talking points, but it won't be more than talking points, because Trump knows there are bigger deals than raising issues that he and his State Department don't know much about. Right. Number one. Number two, remember, he is based on outcomes, not on process. Right. He knows what to do to get those outcomes. I think he will be much more fixated on India, reorienting its defense and military strategy towards a more American style of things, right, buying American equipment, because he has to deliver at home.
Yes.
And you can either have moral lectures or you can have, I can't keep abusing Sandeep Unnithan 24/7. And then expect Sandeep Unnithan to call me on his TV program. Right. Now, it's exactly like that. You can't expect to buy American weapons if you keep, bad-mouthing us and things like that, number one. Number two, when it comes to the Five Eyes, I would say that there was significant fissure in the Five Eyes even in this latest round. I would point you to the UK statement, which was, in my opinion, wrongly indicated as being pro-Canada. What did that statement say? It said we had full confidence in Canada's judiciary.
Right.
It did not mention Canada's police. It did not mention the CSIS, Canadian intelligence. It did not mention the Canadian government. It certainly didn't mention Canadian rule of law that Trudeau likes to trumpet.
Right.
Basically, what the people were telling the Canadians was, intel is not justiciable. You make a justiciable case based on evidence, take it to the courts, get an extradition order, and of course we'll support you out there.
Right.
Australia never even issued a statement. New Zealand issued a statement. America at best said what? It should be investigated.
Right.
We wish the Indians weren't so touchy about these things. This isn't really support for Canada. Right. If you look at, Litvinenko's murder, or the Leicester,
Salisbury poisoning.
Yeah. The Salisbury poisoning. Yes. You look at the kind of support the Five Eyes gave the UK. It was substantially greater. That was actually support.
Yes.
This is actually hedging, hoying, and massive equivalences being created.
Right. Right, absolutely. But Abhijit, before I go, one more quick question to you. The fact that, the Trump cabinet is packed with so many China hawks. All of these nominees have, made their views on China very clear that is actually enemy number one, and they've been very vociferous about calling China out. Do you see a change in Trump's stance vis-a-vis China, or is it going to be a good cop, bad cop kind of thing that he unleashes his cabinet guys on China and then says, hey, listen, let's cut a deal with Xi Jinping?
I think they're very clear that manufacturing can't stay with China. Remember, he was the president during COVID, and it was during COVID that the entire semiconductor crisis happened, where car sales and everything else was stalled because China was artificially controlling semiconductor supplies to the rest of the world.
Right.
Now, Biden's credit, he did impose very significant tariffs and things like that on Chinese dumping. But it has always been Trump 1 and Trump 2 that are much, much more focused on China militarily. One of the reasons Europe hates him is because he is not Eurocentric, he's Asia-centric. Now, Europe loves to think of itself as the center of the universe.
Yes.
When in fact, Europe is increasingly becoming irrelevant. The richest European country is poorer than the poorest poorest American state, which is either Alabama or Mississippi or something like that.
Right.
Germany is poorer than Alabama or Mississippi. Trump is very clear. Your junior partners, you stay in your corner. I have bigger fish to fry. That's going to be China, and he's going to focus on China. And the very fact that he has hawks like that is, it's indication enough.
It's indication enough, indeed. Ambassador Gupta, a cabinet filled with China hawks, possibly of the kind that we've never seen in recent times. Is Trump signaling to Xi Jinping that he means business, he's walking the talk on China, or is it something else to it, that this will actually help him cut a deal with China, possibly, in areas other than manufacturing?
I think the Republicans are going to be taking much more tougher attitude, at China, and certainly, the kind of dumping that China is making of its EVs and photovoltaics, solar photovoltaics, and so on.
Yes.
I think those have to be handled very, very carefully, because the world doesn't have the capacity to absorb the amount of goods that China is trying to dump.
Yes.
And therefore, US and other countries are going to raise their voice and going to sort of put up duties against China. And also, the other issue that is becoming very important is that world is not feeling safe and secure and happy with China-centric supply chains. It wants to distribute the supply chains in other localities, in other countries, bring them back home. Trump is very keen on bringing manufacturing back home, bringing in friendly countries, and so on. So that's another change, that's going to happen. That was also initiated by the Democrats, but it's going to get much more pronounced under Trump. And So I think we should see a much more tougher line at China under Trump.
Absolutely. We should see a much tougher line on China under Trump. And Trump seems to be walking the talk, Deepak, when it comes to China. And clearly, as his cabinet appointees suggest, a cabinet filled with hawks. And the latest surprise, of course, is the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who we started the show by talking about. But that's all we have time for this evening. Thank you very much, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, and my colleague Deepak Bhadana for joining us on the show.